Giving away your handmade project can leave you feeling in a world of embarrassment when what you expected was to be basking in a world of praise. You expect that you're going to make someone that you love really happy, and the reality is that you both end up feeling completely embarrassed. And I'm going to be speaking today from experience. If there was an opportunity for me to gift someone a crocheted item, I was grabbing it with both hands, no matter how tenuous the link. They mentioned that they'd been to the zoo once, I'd crochet them a hippo. They shivered slightly, I'd have made them a matching hat and scarf and fingerless gloves. My intentions were to spread this joy, but boy did it backfire on a few occasions. In hindsight, I was having so much fun crocheting things and giving them away that on a few occasions I really missed the mark. And I mean, I really missed the mark. I've made toys as gifts for adults who at best looked confusingly awkward about it. And on one very memorable occasion I made a baby blanket for a friend who had a baby, and when I handed it over, she looked perplexed. Like, seriously, am I the only person ever unlucky enough to crochet a baby blanket for a baby and to not have it well received? And let's be clear here, it wasn't a choke or suffocation or finger trap hazard, it was well weighted and the right spread of stitches, so I don't know where I went wrong with that one. But on most of the occasions, I can nail down now in hindsight exactly where my brain took a detour that my body shouldn't have followed. Fortunately, the upside of all of these crochet gift giving failures and successes is that I now have a really good idea of when to give my crochet away and when to keep it to myself. Keep it personal. And I don't mean necessarily just writing someone's name on something. Go with a theme that matches their interests or something significant in their life. Pick something that is meaningful to them. The crochet toys that I've made as gifts that have been hands down the most well received were ones that were themed predominantly by like a favorite animal, or in the case of one I once made for my brother, themed around something that he adored as a child, so it had the nostalgia factor. Items themed by bands, sports teams, they all tend to do really well, and also sometimes by colour, but that can be a little bit more hit and miss. Like, just because someone likes blue doesn't mean they like navy blue. They could have been a royal blue person. Apparently the difference is significant. Match their style. And that means if you're crocheting for someone who has a particular sense of style, try to go along with it, even if it's not to your taste. Now, maybe you are more open-minded stylistically, but I tend to have this thing where I want things to look how I think that they look the prettiest, and that's not a winner, because what is the most beautiful to me is not necessarily going to be the most beautiful to you, is it? And it took me longer than I should admit to learn that lesson. If your friend's a person whose whole world is monochromatic or muted greys, they're probably not going to want a rainbow dragon. If they love rustic, whimsical designs, then don't spend several weeks making a modern geometric Afghan for them for their birthday. Hopefully to you this isn't a massive leap, but to me it was definitely a thing. Even if you don't like their style, if you want to make something for them, that's the style or the colour palette that you need to push through your own sensibilities and go for. And then the look on their face when they receive it is it's fantastic. Age and safety. These are two things that I'm gonna club together because there's often a lot of overlap. So take the baby blanket example. I have seen some fantastic crochet baby blankets, and I have been given some myself many years ago that have never gone anywhere near a baby until it was in toddlerhood, because the style of it didn't match what I see as current modern safety standards. And you certainly don't want to hand them something that they're gonna go, that's lovely, but then they're gonna stick it in the back of the cupboard potentially for years and then to forget about it when it actually becomes age appropriate. And then there's age just in terms of general likes and dislikes. I am obviously a fully fledged adult at this point and I still love cuddly toys, but when I give other adults cuddly toys these days, I am now much more careful that I know that I've got a gauge on whether that's something they actually still like. Otherwise you could put a lot of effort into something that's going to leave you feeling a bit awkward and embarrassed when they kind of roll their eyes and raise their eyebrows at you, even if they didn't mean to. I want to talk for a moment about when to give crochet gifts. Special occasions are a perfect time. So a birthday or a graduation, anything in their life that's like a change, like moving house. All these are ideal times to give people things. If someone you love has asked you to make something, they are your prime target for giving a crochet away because you know that they're actually going to want and appreciate it. hopefully. If you get someone who requests something from you, I highly recommend asking them to be specific. So talk to them about color palettes, talk to them about what fibers and textures they like, talk to them about size and scale, and be realistic with them about what their expectations are and what you can actually produce. One of the things that we all get quite a lot now is people sending us AI pictures of impossible things that would never be able to be crocheted and asking you to make something similar. Don't aim for an impossible target because you will both end up being disappointed. I really hate AI crochet. But most importantly, in that special request section, is if you don't want to do it, please don't do it. Don't allow yourself to be bullied or badgered into doing something that is going to turn your hobby into a chore. If you don't have the budget or inclination or time to do it, practice saying no. So many of us are so bad at saying no, but over the years I have had to become a minor league expert at saying no to crochet requests because my hands would have fallen off by now if I'd have said yes to them all. And you get a vibe for whether someone's actually going to appreciate the time and effort you've put into it, or whether it's lip service and perhaps someone who has nicely overinflated ideas of what you could actually produce. Unsolicited gifts can be an amazing thing, but there is a narrower scope, I think, than most of us originally realised for when it's okay to give unsolicited gifts. Remember that not everybody likes surprises or unexpected presents. Sometimes I make something with someone in mind for no rhyme or reason other than I just get into the zone and I want to produce it, and then what I have to do these days is pop it on my shelf or stick it in a cupboard and wait for an appropriate occasion to give it to them. So many people feel like they have to give back when they receive, and it kind of gives them an obligation. They feel awkward about the effort that you've put in, or maybe it's just not quite that level of relationship where spontaneous gift giving feels okay. And that can be a really hard line to walk. Size assumptions. This is mostly applicable to clothes, obviously, although other things can slide in, like don't make someone a toy that's as big as their room, because they're probably going to initially go hooray and then moments later realize they can't get it through their door, or that it's just going to get in the way. But clothes. Crochet clothes can be the most amazing gift, but only in a narrow spectrum of circumstances. Firstly, there's the issue of getting your gauge to your size right when you're actually making the item of clothing so that you can match what you've crocheted to the size. But if you are completely comfortable and confident with that, there is then the tangential issue of what size? Now, if you know someone well enough to know what their clothing size is, then that's brilliant. But it is a bit of a know your audience one, isn't it? If someone gave me a sweater that they had crocheted and I knew that had taken them, let's face it, weeks if not months to put together, and I went to pull it over my head and the head hole was too small, I think I might literally self-combust from the embarrassment of it. The sheer trying to will my head to be a smaller size in order for their time not to have been wasted. They put in this huge effort and then I am ruining it all with my cranium. These are the things that keep me up at night. Basically, if you don't know someone well enough or on the right level to be really confident what their clothing size is, and ideally to get them to be involved in the process of making it, so like trying it on halfway through, actual fitted items of clothing are probably not your best bet. Also, if you know someone is on like a massive health kick or something at the moment, then that is not the ideal time to crochet them clothing, because what you've begun making might be too big when you've finished. Yarn choices are such another important part, and not just for the obvious reasons like allergies. Wool allergies are surprisingly common. A lot of people who crochet find that wool irritates their skin, it can even bring them out in hives, and it's just not something they can work with. But it's also not something that they can wear comfortably too. And even taking allergies out of the equation, a lot of people like me are really picky about texture. If you're making something that's going to be worn, it needs to be a texture that is generally liked by most people. Things like cotton silk blends tend to be really, really universally liked. They're not ideal for all projects, but they work very well. But if you know that the person that you're making a project for is someone who is a bit funny about textures, then it's really important to make sure you get it right beforehand, particularly if it's something that's going to be in close contact with with their body. It's not so important for toys, but that still does bring out an interesting response in a lot of different people. The toys that I have made that have been the most lovingly and well received by people in general tend to be those that aren't the aesthetically perfect ones, at least in my view. They're actually the ones that you can smoosh against your face and feel all nice and soft. High maintenance projects. So most of what I crochet for other people is toys. That is my main thing. It's the thing that I'm most passionate about in terms of crochet. But even those require some care. And garments and blankets particularly, I make a lot of. It's really important to consider how they're going to need to be looked after. So when you're making a gift for somebody else, try to use a yarn fibre that is going to stand up well to use and where the care instructions aren't too complicated. And if it has relatively complicated care instructions, just write them down for the person that you give it to so that they can be aware of how to look after it. Presentation is a funny one because to my mind, it shouldn't matter, and yet in my experience, it really does matter. When I make someone something out of crochet and I stick it in a supermarket plastic bag and hand it over to them, universally, the reaction is less immediately delighted than it is if I wrap it in tissue paper and make a nice bow and present it in a more gift-like way. Perceived value is a thing, and the perceived value of what you've crocheted for someone is higher if you make more effort on the presentation. I really think that shouldn't be the case, but in my experience it is. Is it in yours? Tell me. Let's quickly talk about when things go wrong. I was not prepared for the first negative reaction that I ever got to giving someone a gift. And it wasn't negative like out and out rude. I don't make crochet things for people that I don't like or people I don't know. But it was definitely a negative rather than a positive reaction, and I was shocked, which I shouldn't have been, because if you give and make enough things, eventually someone's not gonna like what you've done. Now hopefully there's someone that has the manners and the social competence to skate through that and not overly hurt your feelings, but we're not all great at off-the-cuff reactions. I know I'm not. My face gives me away every time, no matter how much I try to say the right words. And so it's really important as a maker to be prepared to steel yourself for how you're going to react if they react poorly. Maybe you're not as sensitive as me, and maybe you can understand that someone can appreciate the time and love and energy and money that you put into the project, even if they don't adore the outcome. And that is great. But for the rest of us, it's important to remember that one episode of bad gift giving does not mean you're bad at crochet. It's not a reflection on your skill or your designs or your ability to follow a pattern if that's the case. And it's certainly not a reflection on your friendship with the person. It's just something that happens. So have in the back of your brain some stock lines and, if you can, some stock expressions for smiling and nodding and moving on if the situation doesn't work out how you'd hope. Sometimes if you give away enough stuff, someone's not gonna love it. And maybe someone else would love the exact same thing. And finally, if you love making crochet things and your room has filled up with them and you have no one that you're confident to or want to give them away to, there are a ton of community projects that I've seen pop up on Facebook and elsewhere online where people can get involved with making stuff that is beautiful and creative and has a purpose and is always going to be well received.